Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Future Ready Leadership. My guest today, Mikael Wornoo, founder and president of TechWolf. Mick, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for the chat.
So I heard about TechWolf first many years ago. And my understanding of the platform, obviously you're doing a lot of AI skill-based reskilling, upskilling inside of organizations. But for people who are not familiar with TechWolf, give us a little bit of background information just about what you do, how the company works, how big is the company, how many employees do you have?
Awesome. So we have 100 employees, started the company in 2018 in university. And essentially, we've built a data layer for HR. So we help HR make smarter, more data-backed workforce decisions in probably the key talent processes like training, recruitment, and workforce planning. And what's interesting, in the last couple of years, we saw a lot of HR teams investing in really expensive HR tech. And the results didn't necessarily follow the price tag. And so what we see is that actually data is the key to getting those results. With our data, our customers can achieve essentially a 30% reduction in time to hire, 15% reduction in learning span, 50% improvement in internal hiring rate, with a much lower total cost of ownership. So right now we have about 50 customers across many industries: technology, healthcare, retail, consumer goods. We've raised about 50 million across a few funding rounds, and we're backed by SAP, ServiceNow, and Workday. That was a mouthful, but very, very happy to be here. And that's a little bit about me and TechWolf.
So talk to me a little bit about how it works, because so I have a CHRO group called Future of Work Leaders, and we have around, 35 CHROs in there from companies around the world. And whenever we get together and have discussions, the theme of skill-based training and development and growth inside of organizations comes up all the time. I think there are lots of challenges. There are certainly lots of opportunities, especially when we think about AI, but also lots of challenges. So talk to me a little bit about just the idea of skill-based training and development and reskilling. Like, how is that different than the traditional way that we think about work? And how does a platform like TechWolf do that? I mean, it uses AI. Does it do everything automatically? It kind of nudges employees. Like, how does it all work?
Awesome. So if we unpack the idea of a skill-based organization or a skill-based talent management process, right? Ultimately, it's about, hey, let us really understand down to a skill level what the job requirements are, and let us really understand what the skills of an employee are. And what we saw probably post-COVID is that a lot of HR tech companies started going in that direction. The interesting part was that a lot of them tried to own either one or two talent processes, a relatively small part of the employee lifecycle, and built that on top. Exactly. And they built that on top of Workday, on top of SAP, on top of the core HR systems. We saw that trend, and we're like, wait a minute, that doesn't make a lot of sense to us, because those core platforms are not going away. They will build that functionality eventually. But at the same time, when we were having conversations with customers, one question kept popping up. It's like, what skills do our employees have? And that was interesting to us, because most of our customers and early customers had invested a lot in HR technology, and they still didn't have good data on their customers. And so the way we approached the problem was essentially as a data problem. We helped our customers understand the skills they had, the skills they needed, and then we built an AI solution to help them with the collection of that data, the governance of that data, getting that data back into the systems that actually needs it or consume that data. So that's how we think about the skill-based organization.
Okay, so how does a company do that? I mean, whether they're using TechWolf or any other platform out there, mapping all the skills that an organization or that an employee has seems like a pretty difficult thing to do.
It is a very difficult thing to do.
So walk me through what does that process look like? So let's say, I don't know, I have 5,000 or 10,000 employees at my company, right? I have so many different functions and roles and seniority levels. And a company says, okay, well, we want to become a skill-based organization. The first thing we need to do is map out all the skills that we have. How do you even go about doing that?
So TechWolf has been building large language models specifically for this use case for about 7 years. Because what we saw in the very beginning when we started TechWolf and we were back in university was that there was so much unstructured textual information about employees. Employees had a digital footprint. There were performance reviews, learning data, resumes, all essentially containing one element or a few elements that if put together, give you a pretty rich understanding of what somebody could do. And so we built LLMs to essentially bring that all together and understand the skills of people. So right now we're the only vendor that can infer skills and proficiency at scale for an organization like that. We have about a decade worth of labor market data, historical job postings. We extract skills out of that to get signal. In many cases, we look at people's digital footprint. So think ServiceNow data, Slack data, think CRM data like Salesforce, think publications. And then we look at the data points in the core HR system, people's learning history, people's resume, people's performance appraisals. All of that contains such a wealth of information, and bringing that all together, we can easily get to 95% accuracy and approval rating across our customer base.
Okay, so then it sounds like what you do is you and for any company, again, whether it's a TechWolf, I'm trying to be like the vendor agnostic, but it sounds like the way for any company to become a skill-based organization is you need to somehow hook into every system, every piece of information, or as much as you can about your employees, plug AI and technology and LLM into that, and have it analyze everything that it can find about an employee. So it's kind of like it's almost like building an internet for every single employee that you have inside the organization, where when you query something like Google about a particular topic, it'll give you information, but you can kind of query anything about an employee, and that system should have access to everything that it can pull in and give you that insight, right? So it's a complicated task, definitely not easy. So we're talking about structured data, unstructured data as well, because obviously you can do easy stuff like engagement surveys, you can do performance appraisals, anything where there's a score, but the unstructured data as well. So I'm assuming this means the way that it works is everything has to be done with certain technologies so that a platform can then get access to that data and pull it in. But what happens if something is not done in a technology? So let's say we're having a one-on-one meeting. Well, I don't know, it's like casual feedback and we're like a 5-10 minute check-in. Or let's say you take a course, not a digital course, but maybe you go to a seminar, you read a book, you go to a conference, you learn something new. How does that, and maybe that's the unsolved puzzle for a lot of organizations out there. Obviously, you're learning, you're growing, you're developing, but it's not done through a technology that a platform like TechWolf would have access to. So how do you bring that in? Because it seems like there's a lot of, the leader there plays a very important role in kind of the subjective and the objective criteria of the employee, right?
Mm-hmm. And so when we built our AI layer, when we built the entire infrastructure, what we wanted to do was essentially make sure that there was no additional extra manual surveying work or collection work. So that's a really big pillar. At the same time, we're also trying to be realistic. In a big enterprise, data is spotty. You won't have data on everyone. There is probably 10 or 20% of employees in an organization where you have rich data. So we built a model that could just handle that uncertainty, handle relatively poor data quality in most cases. So we always have the assumption that we won't have anything or everything on anybody, but it's all about building the technology in such a way that you can piece things together. So
yeah,
you can
and
look at the
that's
team
actually
level. Go ahead.
that's a very important assumption for people to know, that nothing is ever going to be 100% accurate, right? So there needs to be, and I don't know, when you're talking to customers, do you have conversations with them and say, hey, look, we can help you make decisions based on the data that we have, but you shouldn't outsource purely your decision making to a
100%.
platform like ours. You still need to be a good leader. You still need to use your judgment, your observation of the employee, right? Like, so that still plays a role.
Yeah, 100%. And so we also try to be very, very stern in saying, look, if you want to use this data for high-level organizational analysis, skill gap analysis, workforce planning, it's okay that this data is not perfect. If you're going to make employee decisions, you need employees to validate this data, or you need the manager to validate this data. And that's been a good 80-20 in some cases, or in most cases. Because most HR leaders, when they want to make a quick decision, when they want to understand the impact of AI on the workforce, when they want to understand skill gaps of any kind, a quick view is probably more important than a perfect view. However, if you're looking to redeploy people internally, if you're looking at improving internal mobility, if you're looking at giving people opportunities, and that data needs to be validated, we have some additional features and functionality for that. But the data will never be perfect. And what we tell our customers is, look, if you start from a business problem and work your way back, you'll see that you typically never need perfect data, but you need an answer. You need to provide a little bit of certainty and a sea of uncertainty. So starting from the business problem is also a really important one, because that gives a lot of clarity and it prevents HR from optimizing the process for process.
Okay, and let's talk about how, because I think this is also interesting. I guess you could say we're moving towards this idea of a skill-based organization, whereas in the past, what would you say it was? Maybe a job-based organization, right? You kind of fit the job description, and if you don't have the previous experience, you don't have the educational background or the criteria, it was very rigid. So it seems like and you tell me how you would define a skill-based organization, but to me, it sounds like you deconstruct all the skills that an employee has, and the job or the ladder that they're climbing becomes irrelevant, right? So the skills that you have, you can use in marketing, maybe you can use in sales or in operation or customer experience. It's less about climbing a ladder and more about trying to fit where your skills can go in the organization, regardless of what the role or function or geography is, and then being able to do that time and time again. So if a job is becoming obsolete, you can pivot to something else. If you're looking for a growth opportunity, you can see where those skills, can move you. Is that kind of the idea? How you think about a skill-based organization as well?
That's exactly the idea. I think what we've seen probably over the past 2-3 years, that the idea has also matured a little bit. Where I remember right after COVID, the skill-based organization was going to be this completely new way of thinking about talent management process. It was going to
Yeah.
be a completely new operating system for work. Well, that didn't really happen, but in a few processes like performance management, arguably learning and development, internal mobility, recruitment, it's shown across many customers, not just our own, that having access to skills instead of just jobs, previous jobs or credentials, is a really, really, really useful data point. It's not this entirely new paradigm that is going to change the world, but it is a much better way of running the known talent process. And so, the way I think about the skill based organization in many ways is essentially personalization. You're going to personalize talent management process at scale.
Okay. So you mentioned something interesting. You say it's not something that's necessarily going to change the world. Why not? Because so many, and I find that a lot of organizations and maybe vendors, they talk about it as if it is, right? They talk about it as if it's this, oh my goodness, it's this new crazy thing. It's going to completely transform your organization and how you hire and how you think about people and promotions. Like they make it sound like it is this gigantic, like we just discovered electricity. But your approach is much more like, it's not going to change the world. It's going to change, it'll improve certain things. Why do you say it's not going to change the world? Are there some legacy aspects that are keeping it from doing that, or like what makes you say that?
One, because I think there's very few things that actually end up changing the world. I think it's very important, and I tell this to our commercial organization all the time, to set expectations and to manage
Yeah.
expectations. I've had so many conversations with customers that were burned by essentially over promising something to the business and then
Oh,
under
I've heard
delivering.
that
And
as well so many times.
exactly. And so that's what we don't want to happen with the skills project, because fundamentally, if you come in and say to a business leader, a sales leader, it's like, hey, I think we can probably reduce our time to hire with 30% if we have better data. Nobody will say, no, I don't want this. If you come in and say, hey, we're going to completely redesign every talent process and we're going to use skills, people almost get this like recoil reaction
No,
where you're
thank
like,
you.
oh, exactly, yeah, great. No, thank you. And so we really try to be quite measured and essentially data driven. So like we can improve these processes. If you want to experiment with skills data in compensation and benefits, great. Here's where it's proven. Here's where it's not proven. We're very happy to experiment with you. It's not going to change the world, but it will have a
Yeah.
meaningful impact on your talent process.
So let's unpack a little bit how it all works. So let's say I'm a company again. I have, I don't know, 5,000 employees, and I'm looking to make this shift. So obviously, like I know one CHRO that I talked to in my new book called The 8 Laws of Employee Experience, coming out next year. But I remember one CHRO that I talked to, she told me that it took her 3 or 4 years to just standardize her data. And this is an
Exactly.
80,000 person company. And she's like, yeah, we couldn't do it. The great AI tools out there, we couldn't do anything. because our data was all over the place. It wasn't accurate. It wasn't standardized. It was here. It was there. It was in different buckets. So talk to me a little bit. So that seems to be like the first step, because so many organizations think they can just find a platform like, I don't know, a Workday or a ServiceNow or a TechWolf and just go boop, turn on a button, and it's like, we're good to go.
Yes. And so where TechWolf is very different from any other vendor in the space, that we are a data layer.
Okay.
3 founders are engineers. We approached this market essentially from a data angle, where a lot of other vendors approached it from an employee experience layer. It's like, hey, let's build a very fancy, fun experience for the employees. And if we do that, we're going to assume that people will keep their profile up to date, and we're going to assume that they will go in every day. Like, that didn't happen. So we were like, look, let's focus on the data. Let's
It doesn't even
focus on
happen on
solving
LinkedIn.
those.
Yeah, people don't even do it on LinkedIn.
Exactly. So we had a laser focus on solving that data problem. We've, again, as I said, we've done this for 50 organizations, the biggest organizations in the world. HSBC, for example, is a customer and an investor. 200,000 people. They were blown away by the fact that we could actually do it. Like, I remember a conversation with Rob where he was like, "Yeah, well, the sales pitch sounded great. I didn't realize that you were actually able to deliver this in a couple of months." Especially in a big organization, there's so many data silos. There's so much complexity, and we've essentially built a team and built our product to handle that complexity, because the data standardization is typically where it falls flat. And one more thing I'll say there is, back to the previous point, that's also why a lot of the hype building around the skill-based organization failed. You go in and say to the business, we're going to completely overhaul our talent management processes. Then there's probably by the other vendors a little bit of underselling of how much data governance and data cleanliness is needed, and then they launch a platform, it doesn't work, and everybody is disappointed.
It goes nowhere. Okay, so let's assume, and so far there's quite a few hurdles, right, that an organization has to overcome before they can even do this. So first, they have to have clean, standardized data. Second, they have to hook into a platform, or they have to find a platform like a TechWolf that can hook into all of their platforms. So already you have two big hurdles you have to get through. But let's say you standardize your data, you cleaned everything up, you can hook into everything. How does this idea of a skill-based organization work? So again, 5,000 person company, let's say I'm in HR.
Mm-hmm.
So how did, like, what are the use cases for when this comes up? Is it for hiring? Is it if I want to switch jobs? Is it if we're looking at layoffs? Like, what are the use cases where this idea of skills comes into play? And can you walk me through an example of like how that would work?
Yes. So for me, the core processes are recruitment, learning, workforce planning, and internal mobility, depending on where you put that.
Okay.
The good news is,
was it recruiting, workforce planning,
learning, and internal mobility?
Okay.
The good news is, both Workday, SAP, and Oracle now have all of this skills-based functionality in their platform. So talking to the representative of any of those organizations will already give you that functionality, and they don't even need a different platform. That's one big step, very different compared to a couple of years ago. The functionality is there. It's simply a point of turning it on, running a good change management process, and a good communication process to the employee population. For example, I'd say what a lot of customers are doing right now is rolling out a opportunity marketplace or a career marketplace.
Yep.
Tailoring learning at scale, tailoring the recommendations of opportunities within the organization.
Can you share what that is for people not familiar with an opportunity marketplace? Like, what does that mean?
Putting me on the spot. I've never thought about of an actual definition. I'd say it's probably an internal job board.
Yeah, that's how I would kind of talk about it. Yeah.
It's a personalized internal job board for both opportunities, but also job opportunities, but also learning opportunities. And so across the board, it's been shown that this improves internal hiring rates, it improves engagement, it decreases the amount of employees that leave the organization because they don't feel like they have opportunities. So it's a really good move in your organization. It's almost a no regret move if it's implemented properly. And so a lot of organizations have implemented a separate platform that was completely disjointed from their core HR tech stack. Just resulted in a lot of friction. And even though the idea was right, if it's not embedded in your core HR system, it's very hard to get it out.
Yeah. I mean, one of my fundamental beliefs in so one of the 8 laws that I have in the new book is the idea of grow or go. And it's
Mm,
the idea that growth is a new form of job security inside of organizations. So if you can
I
give
like that.
employees the opportunity to grow and you have these internal marketplaces and opportunities to move around, unless employees are moving for some sort of a crazy 20, 30, 50% boost in salary, what's the incentive for them to leave? Right? If they know that they can move around and they have access to that and they can use their skills in other areas, what's the incentive for you? And, obviously there are certain scenarios where it makes sense, but by and large, why would you want to go? Because most of the time people leave either because they don't have a good leader, they feel like they've reached a ceiling and they can't go anywhere else. So if you can solve that problem, a lot of opportunity there.
100%. I really like this idea of grow and go, and essentially a talent marketplace probably operationalizes that idea at scale.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's use that example then. So let's say I'm in again in HR. I have access to my company's internal talent marketplace, and I suppose that also we have to assume that the marketplace that the company creates is also good. It's modern. It doesn't look like Craigslist and right, because that you could imagine that kind of killing the experience there too. But let's say a company has like a pretty cool internal AI driven talent marketplace. So is the use case that I'm in HR and I'm saying, I'm kind of bored. I've been in this role for a year. I want to try something else. I want to go into sales or in operations. So I would go into this marketplace and I would look for any opportunities in a particular area that I want, or maybe I would search by skills. I mean, I guess it depends on what the marketplace looks like. And then I submit that I want to go into that role, and then a platform like a TechWolf would then say, based on the skills that you have, you could be a fit in these certain areas, but these are some skills you might be lacking, and here's some courses that you can take to kind of fill that area, and it'll help match me with where I can potentially go inside the company, right?
Exactly. And all of that happens automatically, completely tailored, based or tailored to the skills and the aspirations of an employee. And
Okay.
that's the key point. Going back to your grow or go example, in an organization that has 80,000 people or 5,000 people, there's a lot of opportunity, but you'll typically only be exposed to the opportunities of your immediate network in the organization. And so, what the opportunity marketplace or the career marketplace does is typically democratizing some of that access, increasing visibility, and saying, look, we know you have these skills. We know all the skills that are required for every job in the organization. Let us surface some interesting opportunities for you. It's like
Opportunity, yeah.
Netflix recommending you something to watch, but then internally for either a job or a learning opportunity.
Hmm. Is there a threshold that you would set? So, for example, because as we talked about earlier, a lot of these platforms are not 100% accurate, right? So maybe they miss certain things, maybe there's missing data. And so, if that's the case for a certain employee, maybe they wouldn't get fed that opportunity, even though they maybe have those skills. It's just the platform doesn't recognize it. Because that's one of the challenges that I see, right? Is um, if we rely purely on technology, what happens if we miss out on certain people? Like the one of the examples I think that we keep talking about is when people apply for a job, and what a lot of companies do, they have these AI bots that scan resumes before even talking to people. And so if you assume that the resume is the only piece of information that you need, if you assume that the AI is perfectly matching the criteria, you might potentially filter out a lot of people who could potentially be a good fit for the job that automatically get screened out because nobody ever talks to the candidate, right? So do you create a threshold like you have to be 60% of the skills there? Like, how do you make sure people don't get filtered out who are qualified? Or is that just kind of a part of the risk you take?
I'd say the beauty of a talent marketplace is that it does fuzzy matching. It's going to surface opportunities that otherwise wouldn't have come either to you or that wouldn't have occurred to you.
Yeah,
So it looks at a 60% match or even lower, say, hey, you have some skill adjacencies. You have some skills that might fit in another role. Here's how you might develop. Just like a Netflix recommendation is not always on the mark, but it just gives you something
exactly.
else to
Yeah.
look at,
Okay.
which is very
And I
different
like,
from a recruitment process, which is the other way
yeah,
around.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I like that you said fuzzy matching. So there's, I guess there's the understanding that, as we talked about earlier, there needs to be kind of a leader that is involved in this process as well, who's kind of, overseeing and making sure that it's a good fit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. So then let's say apply for this job. It'll tell me what I'm missing, how close I am to filling that role, and maybe recommend courses. And then so that's the idea of the internal talent marketplace, right? It allows me to move around the organization. Companies can fill roles instead of looking externally, maybe internally. Um, the other thing that's really important there is the mapping of skills that are required for a job, or a lot of organizations are doing now. You mentioned workforce planning, where they're trying to predict what skills do I need in 3 to 5 years. How do you do something like that, right? How do you figure out skills that you need for a role or for a world that doesn't even yet exist?
For me, that's the other side of the equation. So when we originally started thinking about the how to position TechWolf, one of the ideas that came out is let's help customers understand their skills supply and their skills demand. So on the supply
Okay.
side, it's really the skills employees have. On the demand side, it would be what are the skills needed to be successful in a role. And so same thing, we've essentially created specific LLMs that can look at historical job postings, job descriptions, the job architecture, people in that role, and can actually give you a gold standard
Hmm.
or gold standard estimate of what the skills are that are required to be successful in that role. There's an AI governance component as well that essentially tells you, hey, skills might be outdated here. You might want to update it. That can be auto approved. And so those are essentially the two data components where I've had many conversations with organizations either having to overhaul their entire job architecture before they could get started. Organizations that spent 18 months collecting job requirements. That's
Wow.
exactly what we're going after. It's like, hey, the idea and the promise of a talent marketplace is great, but if it takes you 2 years to get there, it's probably not worth it. Now, what if we could compress that time to 3 months and we can just give you all the skills you have, all the skills you need? Then a talent marketplace suddenly becomes way more viable.
It seems to me like the demand side is harder than the supply side, right? Because the supply side is what you have. The demand side is trying to predict or anticipate, or right. I mean, you tell me, like from a technology perspective, what side is more? Because one
So
seems to me like a database of what you have versus a database of what you need.
So I'll give you the complexities on both sides. Um, to understand the skills your employees have at scale, what is hard there is typically you have good data about 20% of your on about 20% of your employees, and
Oh
so
wow,
you
that's it,
need
huh?
yeah, and then you need a
Okay.
model that can actually make sense out of the enterprise data mess. That's hard there. You need to be able to connect to all these databases in a very compliant, secure way. You're dealing with highly sensitive information. Some organizations are literally data brokers, which is borderline illegal. So there's a lot of like legal gray zone that
Yeah.
that comes with that. On the demand side, you said it exactly. The hard part there is nobody can predict the future. So if it's just hey, please, this is our job architecture. Can you link skills to it? That's relatively straightforward. There's plenty
Mm.
of vendors that can do that. Predicting the future is very hard. Now, what I will say, and this is a big trend we're seeing in the market around workforce planning about around future skills. Workforce planning really used to be around predicting the future, like how will the market evolve in a couple of years. But now
Yeah.
we see
Three,
that
5, 10 years. Yeah.
exactly. But now we see that AI is essentially this ubiquitous transformation in every role, in every function, across every industry. And so a lot of the workforce planning exercises are not about predicting the future. They're essentially about how do we model our own technology adoption curve? And so that's becoming a little bit easier because it's going from a very hard problem and almost an impossible problem, which is predicting the future, to a problem that is still hard, but I'd say probably a little bit better defined, which is modeling the impact of AI on the workforce. And so that's what a lot of our customers are trying to do now, modeling the impact of AI on the workforce to see and figure
Yeah.
out how jobs are changing, and then come up with a set of job requirements from that.
You mentioned something interesting. So you said you might have good and accurate data on 20% of your workforce. Is that something that you're finding in a lot of your customers, that most of companies just do not have accurate or good? Interesting.
Every
So
time the team brings me into a conversation, the first or the second question we get is, "Hey, the TechWolf pitch is great, but we don't have good data. And I know I'm going to get this question. It's like, I know you're not the only one. Every organization has gone to multiple mergers and acquisitions, has gone to multiple system migrations.
Yep.
It's very normal to data to not be okay. That's why we're in business.
So what do you do in that situation? So if I'm 5,000 person company, I have good data on 20% of my employees. How do you then give good analysis for skills demand and skills supply if it's only good data on 20% of the workforce? Like, what does the rest? I think you mentioned it infers data, or how do you close the gap?
Yes. So how do we go from 20% to 80% or 90%?
Yeah, exactly.
One, or external data lake. So we have about 2 billion job postings, about a
Okay.
decade worth of labor market data. What that enables us to do is essentially link skills to your previous experiences. If we know that you were an HR leader at Mercer and at Google before, we can look up what the skills, the approximate skill set was at the time, and attach that to your profile. That gets us to, let's say, 50, 60%. And secondly, we can look at the, let's say, simple data sources we have for everybody. Learning history of some sort, performance appraisals of some sort. It's unstructured data. Typically, the course catalog isn't really that well maintained, but we can handle that. We have specialized LLMs to look at people's learning history, how you attach skills to that, not just tagging skills if they took a course. Same with the performance appraisals. It's structured data, unstructured data in a way. We can look at that, attach skills to it. And then the last part is the business data piece. We don't do that for every customer because there's a bit of a, I'd say, data maturity component that comes with it. Not everybody can just get access to sensitive data like that. So that's usually the cherry on top, but it's maximizing all the scattered and unstructured data that sits in the HR and the learning systems, implementing that with external data, and that already gets us to 80%.
Okay, so there are then quite a few inferences that take place, and I guess you kind of have to do that in that situation. But there's a difference, I think, between looking at the technical specifications of a job description versus the skills that an employee has. So, for example, if you look at like an HR role or function, or even engineering or customer experience, you might find that certain legal frameworks or protocols are part of the core skill set, right? But what about things that it doesn't account for? So I'm a great communicator, right? So that might not be an explicit qualification in being a HR leader inside of a Mercer or a Google. Or I'm great at project management. I'm really good at resolving conflict. I'm very empathetic in being able to understand where employees are coming from. Like, you know what I mean? Like they are critical employee skills, but they're not necessarily defined for a particular role or function. And I guess that's where you might look at some of the other unstructured data, right, that you pull in.
Yeah, exactly. And so what we've gotten really good at is say, hey, if you made this transition, what does that mean? Especially if you compare that to performance appraisals, people will give very specific feedback on things you've done well, not that well. But what we've seen probably 2 years ago was when this started, was that organizations really wanted some sort of validation step. So I said TechWolf is a data layer, but invariably the question came like, hey, we want to validate this data at scale in a simple and easy way. So we're like, okay, let's figure out a way to do so. Turns out that the best way to do it is essentially to build a sort of mini agent that talks to the employee directly in either Teams or Slack and says, hey, HR is running a project. We've looked at all your data. This is what we've seen in terms of skills. Would you like to add anything? Would you like to remove anything? We automatically send that to the manager as well, again, in a communication platform that people already use day to day. And that gives us a lot of additional data. One. Two, it also teaches us, hey, if we present these skills to somebody, what skills did they reject? What skills do they add? And so the model has been learning from that as well on a skill by skill level. And so that right now, when we present skills to people, for every customer, the accuracy is at least 85%.
Mm. Yeah, and I think this really does highlight the importance of the role that leaders play in making the decision, right? Because if you only focus on the measurable skills, an organization can potentially minimize the invisible skills, right? Some of the things that we talked about. So it's very easy. Oh, I'm good at Python. I'm good at, graphic design. I'm good at XYZ. but there are a lot of subtleties in there that are invisible skills that are important for somebody like a leader. How you read the room, how you build
Exactly.
relationships, how you get teams to collaborate. A lot of invisible skills that you can't really quantify or put a score down. So,
and that's exactly why I think the skill-based organization is also not going to change the world. If you had
yeah,
a magic wand that could help you capture all that nuance, then maybe yes, it might change the world, because everybody would know, or every manager would know exactly what the skills were in their team. Every manager would know exactly how to allocate talent, and that actually might have a truly, 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 truly meaningful impact. But right now, what we're seeing is, yes, it's typically the observable skills that get captured. In
yeah.
doing so, you can meaningfully improve recruitment, learning, and internal mobility and workforce planning. But it's not this cure-all, it's not this silver bullet.
Yeah, and it seems like a very important conversation to have with leaders, because even as we see with tools like ChatGPT, some people get so reliant on the technology that
Hmm.
they forget, like, you can't just outsource critical thinking to ChatGPT. You still have to learn how to frame your own arguments, defend your positions, debate. Like, those things still matter. So similarly, with any of these technology tools, it's like, there are tools, they can help you, but you can't just outsource all of your talent decisions to them. They're kind of an aid to help guide you in the right direction, but you should still be asking questions. So it seems like there's also a lot of leadership training or retraining that's relevant for that as well.
Hmm. And I'd say the customers that have been most successful with rolling out a skills project have been the customers that truly excel in change management, project management, and employee communications. The,
Yeah.
the, the technology component is important. And obviously, as a technology vendor, it's important. But how the HR team runs the project, communicates, and manages change is probably even more important.
Mm. It's funny. One of the things that I think we're even going to see coming up next, I think in the next few years, it's the idea of like the recorded enterprise. And we're already starting to see it a little bit, right? Where when leaders go in for one-on-one meetings, they sometimes will bring in their phone or a recording device, and they'll say, like, "Is it okay if I kind of record our one-on-one?" And they'll open up like a company pre-approved app. They'll record the one-on-one interview, and that will get transcribed and analyzed via AI. It'll look at kind of the key points, what was discussed, like it'll kind of analyze all that for you. So part of me also wonders, in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, what happens when everything inside of an organization gets recorded, where every employee in the company is wearing some sort of a pin, right? I mean, OpenAI is supposedly working on one with John Ivy, which I'm sure you've heard. So what happens when everything inside of an organization gets recorded and analyzed and viewed, whether it's on video, whether it's on audio, and everything is being fed into AI? It's kind of a creepy scenario to think about, right? So I don't know. Do you see something like this potentially happening? And have you seen anybody, especially doing one-on-one interviews, use any kind of that transcribed or recorded data in your platform to try to make decisions?
So, no, I'd say your point is very valid, though. Internally, we record a lot of meetings. I'm not sure we record one-on-one meetings, but I see incredible value in transcribing meetings,
Yeah.
having like that is incredibly valuable. But just like with any type of transcription, recording, um, good data privacy policies and principles are incredibly important. And I
Yeah.
think especially now in the age of AI, upskilling employees into like just proper data hygiene and privacy and compliance rules are or will be incredibly important. You can't just feed in anything into an AI model and expect that nothing will happen. So I think all of us are becoming more accustomed and used to the idea that a meeting might be recorded or transcribed, or that we feed in some data to models. But it will be really important over the coming years that we all like know where the line is, both as
Hmm.
an organization and as an individual.
Yeah, because even after this podcast, right? I mean, I use a tool called Riverside, and it will automatically create clips. It'll automatically give me the key points. It'll automatically highlight what were the most important conversations. It'll do like all of that.
Hmm.
And so I imagine that in an organization, not just on Zoom calls, but even when you're doing one-on-ones, and somebody just takes out their phone and puts it down and record, like there's just a lot of really interesting stuff that I think could potentially happen.
I also think that managers might be held accountable a little bit more if conversations might be transcribed all the time. So I'm not sure. Like with all of these things, I think there's a positive side and a negative side.
There's always always pros and cons. Yeah. Well, of course, a lot of this is not possible without AI. So I wanted to shift gears a little bit to the AI world. And I know you put out a report recently, and there's a lot of doom and gloom in the AI world, depending on who you talk to. I mean, I'm an optimist. I think you are as well. But depending on who you talk to, some people say, oh, 20, 30, 40, 50% of jobs will be automated. I think it was the creators of Anthropic, right? They came out and basically said there's going to be a jobs apocalypse in the next 3 to 5 years. But in your report, you said that only 18% of tasks are fully automatable. Automatable. Yes, it's a weird word. So only 18% of tasks can be fully automated. I'll say it like that by AI. 62% are still going to remain as fully human, and 38% are going to have significant disruption. So are some of the doom and gloomers out there just wrong? Are we not going to see 1 billion people, 2-3 billion people without jobs in the coming years because of AI?
So as you said, I think there's a lot of nuance to be brought. So one, in an enterprise today, you see that the tasks are being disrupted, jobs aren't. There's just so much surrounding infrastructure that is needed. If you look at the GDP val study that OpenAI just released, like one of the headlines was, "Hey, for some tasks, AI reaches 50% parity, which is a human cannot distinguish between the AI work and the human work." Okay, if you double click, you see that the tasks were very carefully constructed by experts. The tasks had multiple review rounds. If you think about it, in the enterprise, work and the work you get from your manager is never that well defined. And so for me, it gives us a good understanding of where the puck is headed. Yes, AI models can work autonomously for much, 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 much longer. But not every task is high value, repeatable with very clear input and output. And I think that is like one key assumption that a lot of people are making. Hey, look at AI. I can automate these tasks. Yeah, yes, if it's written out perfectly and if it's very clear what the input and the output is, and it's like curated by an expert on how to perform the task. So I think the speed at which it will happen is probably overblown a little bit. At the same time, I'm not sure if you've taken a Waymo. I'm not sure if you're looking at what's happening in robotics. I'd say a lot of people are focused on what's happening there. I think I'm personally a little bit more worried about robotics taking away factory work, blue collar work, because that's when it happens at the pace of millions. I think that's probably where I'm a little bit more concerned. But at the same time, if we looked at the data right now with the models that are available right now, we see that the tasks aren't most of the tasks aren't being fully automated right now. At the same time, you also see that 75% of skills are completely being disrupted. So people do need to learn how to work with AI, partner with AI to do their work. But today, very little work is being automated. Maybe the only exception being that of the software developer. Like more and more that you see that developers and coding models can work for a very long time without human intervention.
Yeah, I think the other area where I'm maybe not as concerned is new college grads, right? I think there were a couple studies that came out, and I don't remember the data off the top of my head. And there were maybe Microsoft was one of them. There were a few companies where they're starting to find that instead of organizations hiring new college grads, they're finding that AI can do a lot of the same work that a new college grad can do, making it even harder for new college grads to get jobs. And again, I don't know exactly what the impact is yet. I think there's just been a few examples here and there of what that's looking like. Is that another area that you're paying attention to for new college grads, or do you think it's mainly going to be in the factory space?
Well, we're actually doing a report specifically on this because
Oh, interesting. Okay.
yeah, exactly. It's some of the things we saw and some of the things one of our advisors also said. Like it seems to a lot of people that entry level hiring is down. So we're going to just let the data speak. Anecdotally, I will say that one from friends that are just graduating, or people I talk to that have graduating children. It does seem that the job market is a little bit under stress. But then the question is, like, what's the cause? Is it AI? Is it the interest rate environment? Is it the overall economy with literally just AI spending keeping the economy afloat? Or is there something structural changing? I think it's very hard to infer causality.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, like, when is the job market not under stress? Right? When is the job right? It's there's always something. So yeah, I think that'll be an interesting. When is that report coming out?
Couple of weeks.
Ah, interesting. Okay, so it's specifically going to look at AI and new college grads.
Yes, AI entry level hiring, how salaries are changing. We're partnering with a pay benchmark provider, so we're really just digging into the data, seeing what's happening, what's changing, how skills are changing specifically to give some clarity
Interesting.
there.
But even with that, even if we were to say that's the case, there's also a lot of opportunity for college grads to use AI to find jobs, right? I mean, if you go into something like ChatGPT and say, "Hey, I'm in Los Angeles, help me find a job in HR," it can scan a lot of these job boards, give you the jobs, help you write the resume, help you write the cover letter, help you potentially find the right people to connect with on LinkedIn. I mean, it can also really help you. So, on the one hand, if you make the argument that, let's say, AI is replacing a lot of college jobs, you can also say, well, AI, on the other hand, is also helping a lot of college grads find jobs if they actually know how to use and tap into these tools and technologies to do it. I always share this story. I remember many years ago, I was working full time at a company, and I was also trying to do consulting on the side. And I was looking for jobs on Craigslist in online marketing and social media. And I had this little, it was called a Craigslist scanner, and it was a little piece of software. You would put in keywords, and it would scan Craigslist for like all of California or all the United States for people that were looking to hire a marketing or social media consultant. And it would give me kind of the list. It would give me the job posting, and then I would go through one by one, and I would send them all, my resume. And I don't know how many people were doing that, but it helped me quit my full time job and eventually go off on my own. So there's always tools that you can use. A tool is a tool. It can hurt you, it can help you depending on how you use it.
I also think that the canned career paths are probably slowly disappearing, but that's a trend that
Yeah.
was already happening. It's like you go into consulting, then you get a job in corporate, then you get an MBA, then you get a bigger job in corporate. There's probably a few variations of those canned career paths where I'd say in the future those they will probably still exist, but they will have probably a lot less room for people, and it will probably absorb a lot less college graduates. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure that a lot of new jobs will emerge. The only question is how quickly will it happen? I think that, as you said, the job market is always contracting and it's expanding at some point. At the same time, AI is changing work, so I think the interesting part is like how will timing overlap? How will the biggest changes happen and when?
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting. So 18% of tasks can be fully automated. 62% will stay fully human, which I think is a very reassuring number. But also there's the 38% requiring significant disruption. So significant disruption means that they'll still be human, but it's going to require this reskilling and upskilling. Like, what would be an example of I don't know, do you have an example of maybe one of those? Like, which one is fully going to get automated, which one is fully human, and which one will have the disruption?
So what we're seeing right now is that repeatable entry level work is being automated in two ways. One, the foundational models are getting really, really, really good. Two,
Okay.
you have a completely new generation of startups that is essentially going after tasks. I recently saw a supply chain startup that is essentially taking over some of the work of a scheduler, automating
Mm.
for very basic menial tasks that somebody in that role would do. So that's definitely something that we're seeing. Um, we've used the Stanford Human Agency scale to essentially rank tasks and classify tasks. So it's 5-point scale that looks at, will this work stay human? Will this work be augmented or automated, and to what extent?
Okay.
What we're seeing, as mentioned, is that most of the work can be augmented today. A good example is AI assisted coding. So right now, I'm
Mm.
not sure if you know any software developer friends. It used to be that you had to write every line of code yourself, right
Yeah.
now you can literally tell an AI model, it's like, hey, I want to build something that does
You can use
this.
replit.
Exactly.
Replit. How do you say? Is it
Exactly.
replit?
I have no idea.
Yeah, replit. There's cursor. Yeah, there's a few. I mean, I've used it
I use
myself.
Lovable. Exactly.
Would-
So
yeah.
that is completely mind-boggling, especially the first time you use it. And so that's a good example of how work is being augmented. Um, a part of the role, which is essentially writing everything yourself, is going away. Same with creative writing. Same with the creation of video. A lot of the more simpler, repeatable work that has clear input and output criteria, that's being augmented to some extent, automated. And then the work that stays human is the work that requires a lot of judgment. Uh, all the work that requires a significant one-on-one collaboration or communication, or where there's simply a lot of dependency, where you have to look at or work with a lot of other people, or where you have to use a lot of tools. There's a lot of context switching, so there's plenty of room there for humans to still excel.
Okay, so those are kind of like the three categories there that we see. Um, so the fully automated, I guess that would be to your point, anything repeatable. So anything data entry, cold calling. I'm trying to think of a like a very specific job. Um,
So I'm seeing if I can pull up some data here. So I'm going to pick augmentable, let's say, in
yeah,
project
maybe
management.
data entry,
Yeah, but
telemarketers, um, even cashiers. I guess we're seeing more and more kiosks, maybe some basic bookkeeping and accounting services. So a lot of those potentially, right?
yeah, we're seeing that a lot of roles in HR can be augmented.
Oh, and
We're
HR as
seeing,
well, huh? Yeah.
yeah, a lot of, but
I,
augmented, not automated, because there's such a big human component. But
yeah, yeah.
anything administrative, in business development, we're also seeing a lot. So let me pull up a business
I also
development
wonder
role
what
here.
this is going to mean for colleges going forward. I kind of have this debate with a lot of friends of mine too, because I have a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old. And, the other day we were talking about contributing to our kids' college fund, and we were sort of debating, like, do we even need to contribute to a kids' college fund?
Mm.
Because by the time my daughter goes to college, which, in 9 or 10 years, the scale of AI that we're going to have is going to be ridiculous. And I can easily imagine going into ChatGPT and saying, hey, my daughter wants to be a doctor or a veterinarian. Develop a university grade curriculum for her with study hours, with books recommended, with quizzes, with assessments, with everything that's required for her to get that same education, and build a website that she can interact with and go through and take the assessments. And you can imagine in like 10 minutes, basically creating your own personalized university for your child around whatever topic they want to study.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Wow.
also really
Yeah.
wonder what's going to happen with that going forward. Like everyone will basically have their own private university.
Yeah, and it will start, or yeah, I think it will start way earlier, right? People that are 10, 11, 12 can start working with AI, can start learning. And so the the people coming into uni are changing completely in terms of skill sets. Their expectations will change completely, and the people coming out of it will also change, and the job market will change. So it's a very fair point. At the same time, I do think something like a university will be around. It's been around for hundreds, arguably thousands of years. So,
Yeah.
some education for your kids will probably still be there in a formalized
And
way.
maybe one more question for you. What's next for this idea of the skill-based organizations? So, we're obviously towards the end of 2025. When you're meeting with your team, what are you guys talking about in 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Like where is this potentially heading? Where can this go if you think long term?
So we're seeing a world where humans and agents collaborate. I think that's a very fair assumption to make. And so the role of HR is going to change completely. I'd say the AI transformation is probably the biggest transformation of work we've ever seen in our lifetimes. I
Yeah.
think it's bigger than the internet for sure. It's going to take a while to play out, but it will be a big transformation. And so we're trying to make sure that we can be a thriving business in this new economy. And a big part of that is making sure that all the tools we have accessible to assess the skills of humans are available to assess the skills of agents as well. So we want to make sure that we can facilitate there. Or our mission as an organization is to help people flourish at work. It's very fair to say that people will work together with agents. Maybe we'll manage a couple of agents in every organization, and so I think the best thing we can do is making sure that people stay at the center of that AI transformation. And so we are building the data infrastructure for that. The number one thing we're helping our customers with right now is helping them understand the impact of AI on the workforce, both in terms of skills, tasks, and jobs.
And then in 5 years, do you imagine every company will have something like this? Every company is going to be working with AI agents. Every company will have a talent marketplace. Like, this will just be commonplace amongst all businesses?
Yes, I think the idea of personalizing your talent management is a very good idea. I think it's going to be required, especially with newer and newer generations coming in. It was a trend that happened before COVID, during COVID, after COVID. People expect more in the enterprise. The consumerization of enterprise software was a trend that was going on, that was spoken a lot about a couple of years ago. Now with ChatGPT, that is only going to accelerate. People will expect that their HR services are really good, and so personalization at scale will be important, and skills are needed to accomplish that.
Well, lots of exciting things coming down in the future. Mick, where can people go to learn more about you, your company, anything you want to mention for people to check out?
Sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn. That's Mikael Wornoo. You can find TechWolf, techwolf.ai. And you can also check out our Workforce Intelligence Index. That's the first thing you'll see when you visit our website. It was really nice chatting with you, Jacob. And I hope we see each other soon.
Likewise. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Make sure to check out TechWolf. I love the name, by the way. From all it's like a cool technology name. So good job on the name.
Thank you.
And thank you for taking time out of your day to speak with me. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Likewise. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Future Ready Leadership. If you want to get access to more content on how you can become future ready, make sure to subscribe to the newsletter. It's thefutureorganization.com/newsletter. And if you enjoyed this episode, please send it to somebody who you would like to see become a better leader. Thanks for listening or watching, and I will see you next time.